8,000 years ago, if your mind started to break, the treatment was a sharpened stone, boring a hole straight through your skull into the living bone with no anesthesia. And here's the part that should stop you. The people doing it weren't fools. Archaeologists have unearthed hundreds of skulls, and get this. Many of them show that the holes had healed around the edges, meaning the patients actually made it. Today, a breaking mind gets you a diagnosis, a pill, and a quiet room. We hide it. Your ancestors couldn't. In a band of 30 people where every single body mattered, a mind that worked differently was one of two things: an asset or a threat, chosen or cursed. There was almost nothing in between, and which one you were came down to a single question the tribe asked about your broken brain. Can we use this? We look at ancient rituals and call them primitive. But evolutionary biology hints at something we got backwards. Ancient humans didn't just tolerate the minds we now medicate. When they could, they put them to work. To see how, you have to stop thinking of these conditions as disorders for a second and start thinking of them as features. Because in the right world, that's exactly what they were. Start with the most modern affliction there is: anxiety. Today, if your brain races at night, if you flinch at every sound, if you can't stop scanning for the worst thing that could happen, that's a disorder, and we'll medicate it so you can sit still in an office. Now put that exact brain on an open savanna 50,000 years ago. No walls, no locks. Everything in the dark is hungry. In the tribe of 30, the one person who can't switch the threat detector off isn't a patient. They're the night watchman. While everyone else sleeps deep, they hear the twig snap. They catch the grass moving against the wind. Evolution never wired us to be happy. It wired us to survive. And the anxious brain is a survival machine that simply never clocks out. Same story with what we now call ADHD. Can't lock on to one task, constantly scanning, sudden bursts of impulsive energy. In a classroom, that's a problem. On a hunt, across unpredictable terrain, a brain that scans everything and reacts in a heartbeat is exactly the brain you want. And this isn't just a nice metaphor. The leading version of this, researchers call it the hunter-farmer hypothesis, points at a real gene, a variant called DRD4-7R, linked to novelty-seeking and restlessness. In one well-known study of the Ariel people of Kenya, that same variant lined up with better nourishment among the ones still living as nomads, and worse among the ones who'd settled into farming. Same gene. The settled world punished what the moving world rewarded. I'll be straight with you. These evolutionary stories are hypotheses, not settled law. But the pattern underneath them is hard to unsee. The trait isn't broken. The trait is in the wrong room. And then there's the hardware that breaks the hardest. Voices, visions, a total split from shared reality. What we'd call schizophrenia, or severe psychosis. When an ancient human started hearing voices and seeing the unseen, plenty of cultures didn't lock them away. They elevated them. From Siberia to the Amazon, the person who slipped reality was often the one believed to be touching the spirit world. They became the shaman. Here's the detail that reframes everything, the one almost nobody mentions. In many of these traditions, the breakdown wasn't a side effect. It was the entrance exam. Anthropologists who studied shamanism, Mircea Eliade most famously, found the same thing again and again. The future shaman is marked out by a crisis, an illness, a descent into madness they have to survive and come back from before the tribe will trust them to guide it. The crisis that gets you committed today was for thousands of years the qualification. Now, one honest flag. The old idea that shamans simply were schizophrenic has been argued over for decades. The strongest objection is a good one. A working shaman controls the trance, enters it, steers it, comes back. And that control is exactly what someone in active psychosis can't do. So the cleaner truth is this. The same wiring that could destroy a person could, with control and a role to fill, make them the most important member of the tribe. Because here's the brutal other half. There was a line. And when the voices turned violent, when the mind became a danger instead of a gift, the tribe stopped elevating you and started trying to fix you. Hard. That's where the drill comes back. Trepanation. Scraping or boring through the skull with flint or obsidian. The common belief in many of these cultures was pretty straightforward and scary. All that pressure, those voices, that evil stuff, it was all stuck right there in your head. So you cut it a door. Did it work? The healed skulls prove people survived. They do not prove it cured anyone's psychosis. A lot of trepanation was probably for head injuries, fractures, crushing headaches, but not for madness at all. And where it did seem to help, it wasn't because spirits escaped. It's that draining real pressure from a real injury can bring real relief. Raw, mechanical problem solving. Not magic, and not a psychiatric cure. When the knife wasn't the answer, they reached for chemistry. Ages before antipsychotic medications, healers in Greece, Rome, and Egypt administered potent botanical remedies to distressed individuals, primarily black hellebore, the renowned ancient cure for insanity, alongside mandrake and henbane. These aren't gentle herbs. They purge, they sedate, they can kill. The treatment was to push the body to the edge and hope the mind reset on the way back. It sounds barbaric, and it was dangerous. But think about this. In the 1930s, modern psychiatry developed electroconvulsive therapy, a treatment that deliberately triggers a controlled seizure to relieve severe mental illness. We didn't invent the instinct to shock a frozen mind back to life. We just traded toxic roots for a measured current. The impulse is ancient, and for the minds that couldn't be used or fixed, were the ones too withdrawn to move, too lost to contribute, the deep past was merciless in a quieter way. A small band on the move had no surplus and no safety net. A person who couldn't keep up was terribly, fatally exposed. That's the floor of the curse. So you'd assume the modern world, with its medication and its hospitals, is simply better at this. And here's where it gets strange. In the 1970s, the World Health Organization ran a massive cross-country study, following people with schizophrenia for years. The result was so odd that researchers still argue about it today. People in poorer, less industrialized places, rural India, Nigeria, often recovered better than people in wealthy Western cities, full of clinics and drugs. It is important to note that this particular finding is subject to considerable debate, with subsequent researchers having raised questions regarding the methodology of its measurement. So don't take it as gospel. But the explanation people reach for is the part that lands. In those settings, the person who broke down was still woven into daily life, still given small work. They were still somebody, not a patient filed away, but a member who stayed, which points at the real variable. It was never just the brain. It was the world the brain had to live in. For most of history, mass confinement of the mad was rare, and then the modern industrial world scaled it into an industry. Factories needed bodies that could stand at one machine and repeat one motion for 14 hours. They needed predictable. And anxiety isn't predictable. ADHD isn't predictable. Mania isn't predictable. So we built the asylums bigger than ever, and filled them, not only with the truly suffering, but with every mind that simply couldn't be standardized. We tell ourselves we're more civilized now because we use chemicals instead of stone, and quiet rooms instead of caves. Maybe. But your brain is still running the same ancient hardware it ran 100,000 years ago. The wiring of anxiety, of focus, of psychosis, that hasn't changed. The only thing that changed is the world around it. Your ancestors looked at a mind that worked differently and asked, how can we use this? And we look at the same mind and ask, how can we hide it? That's the whole story. The brain didn't break, the room did. And that wiring, the watchman, the hunter, the one who saw too much, it didn't go anywhere. It's still being passed down. It's threaded through families. Maybe yours. Same hardware, different century. Still deciding, every time, whether to call it cursed or chosen.